Murray. I've had some complaints as far as the recording of my voice, so I'm working on that. Please know also in each of my recordings that I do offer a transcript. The subject is going to be Project Monarch. Though I was never really a part of Project Monarch, I know some of the inner workings of how this type of trauma-based mind control works. I'll warn you now that some of the details I'll be going into are pretty graphic and quite disgusting. This project was started by those in great power in order to program their children in such a way that they will be successful and to ensure that those in great power stay in great power. The perpetrators are mostly those in high-ranking military positions, politicians, the elite, and those families in the Illuminati, which have been documented. Of course, it does go on in what you would call everyday families as well. While I can't give specific names, they know who they are, and they know that I know who a few of them are, at least. This is a very sad subject for me, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. The idea is to start the splitting of personalities and alters when the victims are nothing but babies. Most psychologists agree that our basic core personality has been developed in us by the age of 5, or roughly thereof. It's these formative years that are crucial in the creation of alter personalities. These very, very young victims are purposefully abused in some of the most horrific ways possible. It is through this very severe abuse that as a way of protection that the mind has to disassociate and put up barriers. The mind must do this as a defense mechanism. It is the only way that these victims can survive. I'll, as best as I can, describe in some detail the methods that these very sick and evil people use. One of the more common methods starting at birth, when they're just newborns, is that they will put a clothespin or a similar device on the big toe of the baby. Our nerves in our feet are very sensitive. They put just enough pressure to cause severe pain, but not so bad as to injure the toe permanently. The baby will then obviously cry, as this is pure torture to them. It is not like they can remove the pin from their toe, as they are totally helpless. All they can do is cry out in agony for some kind of relief. Those, usually the parents, will do nothing to stop the pain. The baby will just cry and cry and cry. It is only when the baby stops crying, which can take hours, as you know, that the parents will stop this torture, and then will be very comforting to the baby. This only serves to reinforce in the baby that crying from such torture and mistreatment will not give them the comfort they need. They have then learned to disassociate from this severe trauma. That is basically the core method of trauma-based mind control. They have other ways as well to cause trauma that is sexual in nature and stuff so disgusting that I just won't go into it. I can't go into it. Needless to say, the end result is the same. If they show any discomfort in the least, they will not be relieved from the torture that they are experiencing. You have to understand, it is at these young ages that we are developing our personalities, as I stated. These alter personalities are starting to show, and these alters are nurtured and encouraged The parents will then start giving names to these alters and will dress and treat each alter personality differently. They will then, through positive and negative reinforcement, give certain cue words to each of the alter personalities of the young child, so the child can switch back and forth from one distinct personality to the other. Another method that is used is that of trauma bonding. You see, they need these young children, very dependent on those who will become their handlers. A lot of times these handlers have been picked out before the child is even born. How sick is that? These handlers are often experts in subjects like hypnosis, NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, and other behavioral engineering techniques. It's rare that the actual parents are the handlers. It is in at least 90% of the cases that these handlers will actually do most of the caretaking of these kids in the formative years. Often they will have multiple handlers that all know the trigger word for each individual child. Later in life, when they are passed off from one handler to another, the trigger words are also passed on, of course. Each handler then, by the use of various techniques, create other alter personalities depending upon what their end goal is. Some of the goals can include becoming high-ranking government officials, and that goes all the way to the top, by the way, to CEOs, and so on. These poor individuals are pretty much robots, with no or little free will of their own. It is quite alarming how many of our top officials that are running this country that are under mind control for various sinister purposes. If you really think about that, it's very disturbing. Getting back to the subject of trauma bonding, I should mention too, and this you can research yourselves, is that very evil people like Joseph Mengele, the German doctor that did human experiments in the Nazi death camps, used such tactics. Some of his victims, long after the ordeals they were put through by Mengele, looked at him fondly due to the bonding that took place. So a lot of times when these kids are very young, they are forced to commit some very evil, heinous acts with those that were their handlers. One such practice is that of sacrificing a baby, which does happen on the dark net or deep web. And again, you can research subjects like human trafficking. They do, in fact, sell humans, usually babies that were born off-grid, so to speak, that don't have any papers, so people don't even know of their existence. Again, this is factual stuff you can look into. A lot of these babies and kids are indeed sold to cult leaders, Satanists, and other handlers, those in the Illuminati. They are bought a lot of times for the sole purpose of being sacrificed by these human monsters. So anyway, when a baby is obtained by these handlers, they will, with these poor, innocent kids, sacrifice the baby and do very sickening things afterwards that I won't go into, stuff I can't stomach. So by committing these acts, a very strong bond is formed between these handlers and their mind control slaves, their victims. They do this stuff with poor innocent animals too. That's usually how they start. They'll do it with animals and they work their way up. Occasionally they will do an adult human sacrifice. As I mentioned, I was never directly involved with Project Monarch. Of all the very sickening things I did in my previous career as an agent, I can say at the very least I never harmed a child. What I did with adults, though, is just as deplorable. It's no excuse, but as I said before, I thought that what I was doing was helping our country. I'm glad I escaped that evil lifestyle, and now it's my mission to expose not only the evil acts that I did, but also the evil acts of those that are in great power that are running our country. It is my hope that in doing so, people will wake up and take their power back and stop being slaves to the powers that be. Please share what it is I am exposing to all those you know. As you know, there is power in numbers. There's great power in numbers. And the numbers we have on our side against these evil people, these tyrants, those who are in control, are far too low. The time for great change is now, because if change doesn't happen, we will all be living in Nazi-like death camps. Murray.